looking for a specialized master's in supply chain. And aside from that, what I was looking at is that I was also considering an MBA in India, and most of my like focus was that either I should be going in for a good school in the United States. So I applied only to two schools, which was the University of Michigan and the and MIT. Aside from that, I did apply to a few colleges in India via CAT and GMAT.
Right. Um, right, Heerak.
So
I think we're having some trouble with the stream, so I'm going to quickly sort of check up if that's going live.
sure.
In the meanwhile, so you mentioned that you applied to the University of Michigan and you considered MIT. Any
Mhm.
particular reason that you focused only on the US and not to other places like Germany, which I think is an exciting place to study supply chain and marketing. So any particular reason that you prefer to study in the US?
Yeah, so I was actually considering Germany quite seriously, especially considering the fact that I did know German.
Right.
But I did realize that there are two things. One, I was looking for a specialized master's, and second, most of the European schools they had more requirement in terms of work experience, and then so I needed to wait a little while longer if I wanted to still pursue that path. Aside from that, also obviously the job prospects in Europe are a little bit more challenging, considering that you need to have much more grasp of the local language, even though you may not need it for your actual working, because typically the mode of communication is English, but you still need to know the local language to survive in a new country where people don't speak English otherwise.
Right.
So that's why I focus mostly in the US. I could have considered UK, but it was in that phase of that Brexit, so there was uncertainty involving visa issues, and then also subsequently working after graduation.
Right. Right. Um, okay. You know, what let's talk about your course, right? So you obviously
Mhm.
chose to study supply chain management. So what what exactly, which colleges exactly are considered as experts in the field of supply chain management, and what careers does one look forward to after getting into supply chain?
So supply chain is actually a very interesting field. I know it's after this global pandemic hit us, I think everyone is suddenly now aware of what supply chain is, because the news typically goes like, oh, the supply chains are impacted. So, but historically, supply chain is everything which kind of helps you bring any product to you, starting from raw material till reaching you. It's basically a supply chain with manufacturing in between. So if you think about a car, it's like how does the steel go from it's first starting from steel mills, reaching the factory, getting all the processing done, getting
Absolutely.
buying parts from other companies. All of that is supply chain. And in terms of so in terms of like which are the good schools, obviously the good schools are the ones which are the big brand names for this. So there will obviously there's MIT, and then there's University of Michigan. I would say the key difference between both of these schools is that MIT's program is run by the school Department of Transportation, which is a little more focused towards the technicalities of how supply chain works and the more details about it. The program at the University of Michigan is given by the business school, and the advantage to that is that you kind of get a more of a business and a holistic experience.
Right.
So that kind of gives you a bit of an edge in some way. At least for me, that was a key deciding factor,
Does it
because
also differ in terms of how technical the course is, as compared to MIT?
somewhat yes as well. I would say that yes, definitely. Um, the obviously if the course is being organized by the business school, you will have more of the business aspect of it rather than just the technical details. So you do touch the technical. It's not that it's skipped, but
Hmm.
you are basically well armed enough for all the challenges which you will face in a career, but you're also looking at it from a holistic business perspective. So you are like more like a well-rounded supply chain professional who can fit and work in that cross-functional environment which every company right now is looking for practically.
Okay, that's interesting. So when you brought in this interesting aspect of how the recent pandemic has sort of changed the dynamic insofar as where supply chain management, or where a postgraduate student would probably be seeking employment in today's state of affairs. So do you think that studying a master's, especially studying a master's outside India, in a country like the US or even Europe, do you think it makes sense for a student to consider those options in the coming fall round of applications? And if indeed he or she does, then what kind of jobs are more likely to be flourishing at that point in time?
So there are two parts to this. I'll break this up. So first one being applying. So if somebody's applying right now in fall, that typically means that they'll be probably joining like next fall,
Correct.
and which means a graduation date of probably summer 2022, which is almost 2 years from now.
Right.
And hopefully, I expect that this pandemic will be behind us by that time for sure. So, and then, I would expect that you should be able to probably attend your classes. At least I hope so. That's gonna be the case. And in terms of post this pandemic, like career paths, I think one thing which is now becoming a very talk is the area of supply chain risk mitigation.
Okay.
Because I feel that suddenly right now companies were like most of the organizations were kind of caught off guard because this is something unprecedented. Even though I'm sure that supply chain risk mitigation could not really, even if you work towards it, it would be right. This kind of event is one in a lifetime kind of an event. So it's kind of difficult to plan for, but I'm sure most of the organizations would be focusing on this. Aside from obviously the more regular supply chain roles of operation managers and supply demand planning, inventory management, and the likes.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, and obviously that you mentioned the risk mitigation now is going to be really hard. It's an act of God, isn't it? So yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Okay, let me change tacks a little bit. You talked about how the program at MIT is different from the masters offered by the Ross School of Business. Let's say we compare the master's program offered by Ross with the MBA program, right? So could you compare these two programs, and I guess the interest that our audience would have would be primarily there's either a student who's fresh out of college, maybe a year or so of experience, and obviously masters is something that he or she is really keen about, but should they apply for a master's program, or I think the decision is should we wait, gain some experience, and then apply for an MBA after 4 or 5 years, right? So how would you, two parts again to this question, I guess. How would you compare an MBA with a master's, and what would the payoffs be, return of investment be on each of these programs?
Correct. So there are actually three graduate programs offered by the business school at University of Michigan. So starting off with the Masters of Management, which is typically for people straight out of undergrad. And then you have the MBA for the much more experienced one. I would say the supply chain program fits somewhere right in the middle, where it has a good mix of people who are recent grads, and then also people with a lot of experience.
Right.
One key differentiating factor so typically the program is compared more to an MBA rather than the Masters of Management, simply because the average experience does tend to go towards about, on an average, 4 to 5 years, which is creeping close to the MBA experience requirement.
Okay.
One key difference is just in the fact of career options, obviously, because the MBA, you get a more like well-rounded approach, and you can also explore careers in industries like finance, and then other domains. Basically, you can go to finance, consulting, general, all those other. The supply chain program is a little more specific for operations and supply chain driven kind of roles.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I would say that they can be almost like almost at the same level.
Okay.
Of course, the pedigree of the MBA program is definitely a bit more. There's no denying that part.
Mm.
Aside from that, I think the one key important factor, which I'm sure all students would be keeping an eye out for, would be the fact that the supply chain program is a STEM program,
Correct.
which basically gives students the option to have like work in US for an extra 2 years after the mandatory 1 year of work authorization after graduate program. I believe that the university was working towards making their MBA also with some kind of a STEM degree,
Okay.
but I'm not sure if they have actually achieved that yet or not. I'm not very confident that part.
Okay. But, but at least studying a technical course such as supply chain means that you can avail of the OPT, which gives you 2 additional years of visa extension to continue to work in the US market, and that's quite
Definitely.
an interesting point to bring up.
And another point, obviously, to which obviously that is kind of it adds up to is that you also get 3 attempts at getting a H-1B visa. So
Right.
you have more attempts, and then you have more of a chance. It is a lottery at the end of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right.
And
Sorry.
I just wanted to, I missed out one point, which was another key differentiating factor between the MBA and this program is that the MBA is 2 years.
Okay.
And the supply chain program is just a year-long program.
Right.
So it has its pluses, it has plus and minus, obviously, because the supply chain program is a shorter program. So you get in, you get out, you spend lesser time outside the industry. You can quickly join back, and you're not probably spending an extra year of tuition. But on the other hand, what that extra year of studying at school obviously gives you is that you have a lot more time to explore different subjects. You get more knowledge, obviously, which is a part of the MBA. So it's a little bit of a trade-off which you can kind of make there.
Absolutely, absolutely. These are obviously nothing is written in stone. I guess as a candidate looking to study management, I think these are the payoffs that you need to analyze. Is it better to work for an extra year, or should I spend a year more in the program and learn more from the same, right? It obviously comes attached with an extra cost of not just tuition but also living expenses. I mean, which is itself interesting. I remember us talking about this. The fact that Michigan, as a state, the standard of living would be vastly different from let's say one of the coasts or even New York. And that I think that's a classic payoff that a student should ideally analyze. All right. So let's. You've told us about your journey. You've told us about how you decided which course to apply to and which locations to apply to. So clearly there was a lot of research that went into this, right? So when you landed up on campus and you started the program, right? What was one thing that you discovered which is something new, something which people in their usual research might not come across? Any such information you can share with us?
Yeah, I think the key differentiating factor was the very I would almost call it the intention behind the learning process. Coming from an engineering background, obviously I was a little more used to the fact that I needed to just prep for an exam and be ready and give it. Here it was more of a regular engagement. You had the regular assignments going on, so you need to be more regularly involved. And it all kind of I realized towards the middle of the course that it all kind of boiled down to the fact that the ideology behind or the intention behind what they want to teach you here is a little different. In India, at least typically, that was my experience. I'm not sure about anybody else, but my experience was that I typically would be studying to clear an exam. And that's just how it worked. We would obviously learn, yes, but typically the idea was that you wanted to just pass the exam. That was your end goal.
Yeah.
Here, the concept is a little bit more different, and it's like that they want you to understand rather than just clear an exam, because that's just how the way it works. I don't know if this is just the University of Michigan, if it's just a grad school. I would probably say this is more of a grad school experience, honestly, if you ask me. And it's just that the intent, sole purpose is that you learn and not just clear the course.
Right, which is very very true. You bring out something which is which is something which even I think our government has taken into account, because I don't know if you've been following up, but the new NEP that has been announced by this government, I
Yep.
mean, it takes into account all of these things, saying that maybe we are churning out educated literate graduates, but I think the focus so far at least is more on clearing exams rather than to actually learn and become a more learned person. And I think that's
Exactly.
and you rightly pointed out, this is probably a difference more at a university level than in the education system itself, and not specific to a particular school. So I think that's interesting. That's quite a interesting thing to know. Okay, how about how about diversity on campus? Because you fly out from India, you know you go from an environment where everybody is thinking and acting the same way, and you sort of anticipate that, and suddenly you're in this big university setup. It's a world class university, and you're surrounded by thousands of kids around you. So how did you deal with the diversity? How was diversity on campus, and how did you deal with this new environment?
So there are, I would say, a lot of different parts to it. As a starting, I'll say my program, like so the supply chain program, had 80% international students,
Okay.
which was a big number because even though the class size was small, I would still
Right.
say that it was a big differentiating factor because I was like, well, everyone is an international student. So you had the people from different nationalities. You had people from China, Taiwan, and then India was obviously there. And then, so we had a lot of different people, even, but this is just my program. If I talk about another, like one of the classes I did where I was a part of a consulting group, I
Mm-hmm.
had a colleague from Europe. I had a colleague from a couple of colleagues from US, and then I had there were two of us from India, and we would all be working together. It was always like it's a very diverse experience, and you often try and understand and learn from how different people's experiences are like they're different because they're within the bottom of different parts of the world. It kind of adds to your learning experience and gives you that I would almost say like a different chain of thought because you kind of see things from not just your perspective but from their perspective as well. So it kind of overall broadens your vision.
Absolutely.
But also, not to mention the fact that obviously we are going to be far away from home. There's often times that, oh, I feel like having Indian food and all that. I would say that I don't think there are any cities or states in US where you will not find any Indians living. We are, we are practically are everywhere. There's no doubt about it.
There's so many of
I
us.
There are just so many of us, and you'll find people everywhere. You'll find restaurants. You'll never miss the food really aspect, I would say. You might need to make it or something, but I think because food, I think, is an important part which you often miss when you are outside the country.
Sure, sure.
So I don't think there's any dearth of that. Not in Michigan for sure.
Okay,
Not in any of the big cities you'll ever find that problem.
okay. But when we talked about the technical aspects of
Hmm.
what's the course like, how's the application process like, how's diversity like, how about we change tack a little bit, and you tell us more about Michigan, the
Hmm.
state, the city where you studied, and what would a typical student from India
Hmm.
or otherwise, now what would you do to just relax, to unwind, what kind of activities?
Sure. So Michigan is a part of this region which is called the Midwest.
Right.
It's it's not a part of either of the coasts, and it's a very interesting state. I would say it's got actually a lot of wilderness. It's got like almost I think 50% of the area is covered under forests.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it is a lot of natural beauty. It gets cold. It gets really cold. I will tell you that.
Yes.
But you don't really feel that because you're in homes and every place is heated, so that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
And in terms of actually like living, I think that the people here in the Midwest are very nice people. You can all,
Mhm.
they're always approachable. Go out, speak with them. They'll help you out. And in terms of outside school activities, I can tell you that when I was still studying, we took multiple road trips. We Our typical summertime activity would often be like go by the lake, go just chill, even if possible, rent boats and relax in the water. And then winter, obviously, you have got the option of winter sports like skiing, snowboarding, all of those. So, just as a matter of fact, today, right after this, probably this call, I'm going to be heading out kayaking right now.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Okay. I don't want to be holding you back too much then. But interesting. So what you're saying is that if you're an outdoorsy person, then definitely you're gonna have a lot of things to do out of Michigan. Obviously, there's the run-of-the-mill malls, and I'm sure in this scenario you're not frequenting them often, but I'm sure in past days you would head out for a movie, you would head out for other such
definitely.
activities. Absolutely.
It's Michigan is not a Michigan is kind of state where you have a lot of like small. It's more of a suburban life, is how I would call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a little bit spread out and all that, but it is good because you have that peace of mind always. And that's what I really like about Michigan is that it's nice, calm, peaceful. Enjoy
Hmm.
the nature,
Hmm.
get your work done, and then you're free to relax, unwind. And obviously, if I haven't mentioned before, I like people here are actually awesome.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think I guess as an ambassador of your college, you're doing a great job of that. Um, I think most of the themes that I wanted to talk about have been covered largely. But let me sort of go back to one question which I'm sure a lot of our viewers are really intrigued about. Um, what kind of a score gets you makes you a serious candidate for Ross or in general a good Ivy League school in the US, right? What kind of a score should did you target? And I'll let you tell our viewers about what was the score that you did get.
So I'm gonna get to my score at the end of my answer, but I will say that a score does not really is not like the sole purpose of your application. It is like it's not it's always like a matter of how you put together your stories, which is basically like why are you motivated to do this program?
Yeah.
And then it's more about how you kind of like you have to tie everything together into one complete application, and then that's how you present yourself. It can't just be driven that, oh, if I get a good score you'll get it. No, that's it. Honestly, I know that most like if you're probably in India, I know that's how most of our exam systems used to work, that you get a score, you'll get an interview, and you'll be able to get in. Here it's a little bit of a different, as I said, again, difference in ideology. They look at a person as like a whole complete individual. They'll be looking at things that like what do you want to gain from this program, and what do you also bring to the table.
Right.
So it's
Right.
it's a little bit of both.
Right.
And I would never say that there's any good GMAT score. I did have a 730, but I don't think that should deter any of you to kind of apply, because it all at the end of the day boils down to how well do you put everything together.
Right, right. Um, okay, interesting point you make. I think I think the general sense that even when I speak to students, I think the general sense is that if you're applying to some of the Ivy League universities, MIT,
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, Ross,
Mm-hmm.
and otherwise, you look at a score of a 700 plus is generally a good range to be in. But as you rightly pointed out, I think it's equally the other application parameters like your experience and how you portray them and your motivations and so on and so forth. But I do have a follow-up question, right? So
Mm-hmm.
clearly, every B school,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether it's in the US or even outside, maybe in Europe, I think every B school tends to toe a particular philosophy and tends to put a greater value on certain aspects
Mm-hmm.
more than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so some B schools might look at leadership as
Mm-hmm.
something that they value a lot, and they tend to give it greater weightage and greater importance, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what, according to you, is
Mm-hmm.
something that the Raw School of Business places a greater value upon, right? Besides obviously the GMAT score and everything else that goes in the application, what do you think can significantly impact the admissions committee?
I would, I don't think I would say that there's any one single factor which is like, which will be like, oh, this will make or break your application, because
Sure.
that, if you think about it, that's almost kind of like a backdoor, and nobody really keeps like, it doesn't work like that. Your
Sure.
application is reviewed by a human at the end of the day. So I would say that the important thing which you should kind of look out, especially when you're choosing a school as well, is that you kind of should look out on what does that school really work towards, like what is their philosophy, and how well do you align with those. So for example, I would say that the Raw School of Business is very big on a concept called action-based learning.
Okay.
So you kind of like learn by doing.
Right.
That is something which drew me a lot, because I felt that yes, you can only learn more by actually doing the things. You can learn from a book, yes, but if you do it, you know that you know how to handle it.
Just glancing
So
upon your LinkedIn profile can sort of give somebody the idea how this is actually applied, because if I'm not
yes,
wrong, you did undergo multiple live projects, and these are also part of your LinkedIn
right.
experience.
Yes. So that is right. So I did, like, as part of my course in just 1 year, I had two live projects. One which was undertaken along with A.T. Kearney, which is a big consulting firm. And then I was working for a very big beverage company in that case. And the other one was with General Motors. So two big brand names. And these brand names are obviously like kind of testament to the fact that the Raw School of Business and the University of Michigan is really good at what they say that yes, this is their core value, and that's even the organizations and the corporate world does recognize that.
Absolutely, absolutely. The fact that these big companies are willing to not just hire you, but also, do live projects on a regular basis with the students there, really, really paints a very rosy picture of the Raw School of Business. And I'm sure our viewers are gonna, walk away with that kind of an impression. Okay. Well, any last words on, what was the one thing that you particularly valued about the Raw School of Business that I guess you'd want to impress upon our young viewers?
Well, I would say that it's a community. I think at the end of the day, once you attend it, it becomes a part of your community. I'm wearing it right now and I'm endorsing it because I feel proud about it. I have a big block M on my vehicle because I'm proud to be associated with this university, with this business school. And I feel that this sense of community is something which you will kind of understand, and you will really realize that this holds a lot of value. And the best part about it is you can reach out to anybody who's graduated from the Raw School of Business. And all you need to do is probably start a conversation by just saying "Go Blue." That's our logo. That's our call is how you would call it. And just start with that. And I'll tell you, I have traveled with a Michigan T-shirt on whenever I've traveled back to India, and I have always met somebody random who I did not know coming up to me saying "Go Blue" at literally every airport I've been, starting from Delhi to LA, London, Amsterdam, Paris. Every airport I have met somebody. Even if I was there for an hour, I have met somebody. So it's just that sheer network, which you are becoming a part of, is a huge value for sure.
Yeah.
So I would really think that yes, you should, like it's something that network, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, action based learning is something which is really big. and it really helps you like implement things which you have learned. And I think that's the single biggest differentiating factor, which I felt that this is really important, and this is really, I would also call it fun, because you learn and then you use it, and then you see that yes, there is a practical application for it. So I really enjoyed that.
Right, absolutely. Okay, Heerak, this was great. I think thank you for coming on and doing this interview. I have one last question before we, bring this interview to an end, and I think it's a very interesting question, especially for our viewers. So the fall round of applications at Ross have already opened up, I believe, and round one, the round one deadlines should be coming up, next month or so. So any large, what would your recommendations be to somebody who's looking at applying? Would you ask them to apply now? Would you ask them to wait it out? Because with the pandemic happening, I think everybody's in this confused state of mind where even if I do apply, I am not sure that the program is going to begin. And will it be a month or so, or a semester or so of online training? So that's a question that a lot of our students have. And so, what would your advice be?
I would say so. So I think anybody who's applying right now would probably be like, they're not probably, they will be definitely going in for next year's admit, like next
Yeah.
year's fall
Yes.
beginning. So I would say that does give us like significant time. I know that all of us are in a limbo right now because of this global pandemic and the situation that has caused, but I guess all of us are kind of hoping that it does get resolved, hopefully by the end of the year, or if not by the early next year, so that classes do kind of resume. Even if like it does not go away, as everyone is saying, this might become like a new normal, and then classes still go on as always. So I would definitely say that yes, if you're interested, do go ahead, apply. It's always helpful to be in the first round of applicants, because you have that's kind of important, because it does give you a better chance. If not anything else, it does help to be earlier than later.
And my sense would also be, and you could correct me if I'm wrong there, given the current the situation across the globe, I think the number of applications in the first round at least would be lower than expected, lower than usual at this time of the year. Might be the case, and so would you say that it's probably better if you apply now, maybe?
I am not sure of what are the applications right now, because obviously I don't know much about that part. But I would say that there's never a bad time. Like you should decide that yes, you want to do it, and then you kind of go ahead and just plan it out. Like
Right.
just make sure that you think ahead. You have an idea of like where you want to end up after the program. Also, you have to give that sufficient amount of thought, because that will kind of help you plan ahead, and that which will actually impact your recruitment also after such a program.
Right. That makes sense. That was, I think, a wealth of information from Heerak. Thanks a lot, Heerak, for taking this time out.
Sure.
I hope you have a lot of fun in your kayaking, adventure right after this, and keep in touch. I think all our viewers are going to be are going to watch this session, and I think it's going to really help out with their application, with their mindset, I suppose.
Mhm.
And so, thank you once again.
Perfect. I will add one piece of information for you guys. I did meet with Anand and Abhishek for a little bit of guidance regarding interviews and all that, and these guys are absolutely wonderful. So do reach out to them once you have like decided that you want to apply. Do go ahead and meet with them.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Very kind words from Heerak. Um, um, I guess we will close at that stage. There's never a bad time for compliments, just as there is never a bad time to apply. And so thanks for that, Heerak. You have a great day, man, and
Perfect.
bye.
So, see ya. Good night. Good evening, guys. See ya.